when I first encountered Claudia, I was at the FDNY as first deputy commissioner, and we had had a major tragedy. 2 firefighters had died, very high profile. You may have heard of it, the Deutsche Bank fire, where down by the World Trade Center. Here's Claudia. Here's Claudia. Long-term member. Claudia is a long-time member of the Picker family. And as I was beginning to say, I met her first when I was at the FDNY, and I was deputy commissioner in charge of things like fire prevention and inspections. And we had lost 2 firefighters in a great tragedy at the Deutsche Bank building down by the World Trade Center. The building was ruled inhabitable after 9/11, but it was filled potentially with human remains and also with asbestos and other toxic chemicals. So by 2007, it still was up and under deconstruction. And a fire broke out, and 2 firefighters ended up being trapped and died. And it was a very big issue. And as it turned out, through a whole complexity of issues, the building hadn't been inspected for a long period of time. Some of it was actually deliberate, that the local captain didn't want to endanger his firefighters. There was no one in the building, and in order to go in, they had to wear full hazmat, and so made a judgment call. But Mayor Bloomberg was mayor then, and he went, not surprisingly, ballistic. And in the course of the whole investigation, we learned that inspections were very decentralized, completely decentralized, and completely manual, literally kept on index cards in 220 some odd firehouses around the city, on index cards in pencil. And while we accumulated the data annually, we really had no idea at headquarters which buildings were inspected, except by category, and how frequently. So to make a very long and complicated story short, we were smart enough to realize that we didn't have the expertise to create a system that would be more effective. And at that time, Claudia was at IBM, and she became head of our project, which ultimately today has evolved to the point where we have a very effective system, which the FDNY is able to run itself. And as a result, the number of serious fires, not entirely because of this, but in part, the number of serious fires has declined dramatically. The number of fire deaths has reached all-time lows. And the whole department has a very different attitude about inspections. Back in the day, inspections were not viewed as manly, and I use that word advisedly. Firefighters viewed themselves as wanting to be supermen and save lives, and preventing in their minds, in a very distorted but understandable subconscious way, if you got too effective on preventions, there wouldn't be any more fires. And if there weren't any more fires, you wouldn't be able to save anybody, and they wouldn't have a job. We've evolved. You'll always have disasters, unfortunately, and saving people's lives and property is really what the department's about. And as a result of particularly Claudia, we have a system now that's one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. So that's how we met. And since then, she's been very engaged in both guest lecturing in SEPA courses, and also being a part of our executive education programs around the world. So that's how she relates to us in her own life. She's been a senior project manager for then IBM and now Microsoft, assisting companies, countries, and cities around the world. Her portfolio is just like incredibly impressive, power companies in Canada, FedEx in London, NYPD, FDNY, Deutsche Bank, Montefiore Hospitals, Wells Fargo, Bank of Tokyo, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Airbus, the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, CDC, the US Army, JP Morgan, and recently Rochester Police Department. So she's been everywhere, all three sectors. In her own time, she mentors military veterans returning to civilian life. She's really an expert in the fine arts. She's raised 2 adult children who are somewhat living on their own, I think, to the extent to which any of our children. I just took my daughter, my 40-year-old daughter, to a Broadway play last night. I still pay, so, but she's doing okay, and she's actually works.
You have to pay to bring them in.
Yeah, that's right. So she has an MBA from Arizona State. Her undergraduate degree is from University of Connecticut, and she studied financial management at UCLA. So she's just an incredible person. I'm honored to know her, and I'm very grateful to her to be with us today. So turn it over to you, Claudia. The show's yours. Only rule that we follow is it is being recorded. We do post it on our website, and we stop precisely at 1 o'clock. So take it away.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that very, very lovely, introduction. And I have to say, it sounds like I've done a lot. And one of the reasons that's true is I'm kind of old, but you just plug away and you keep going. And being in the consulting field, it's like every 6-10 months you kind of get a new job, sort of. Even though I've been with IBM and then Microsoft, you get a new assignment in a new industry, new cultural environment that you're working with, new technology problems. So after a while, you kind of know how to just go with the flow and do your best to make things successful. But what I'm going to do today, I've been invited to talk about what's going on with Microsoft in the tech world. And I put together a presentation. It's like 12, 15 charts or something. And I just wanted to kind of step you through what has been happening in technology, how Microsoft is addressing it, and some of the kind of interesting trends that are emerging as far as how governments interact with technology, and especially the major technology firms, because in reality, you can't avoid technology. And years ago, 6-7 years ago, Lloyd Blankfein, who was the CEO of Goldman Sachs at the time, and now is, I think, the chairman, said, "We are a technology company." And I keep coming back to that because I think all companies now are technology companies, right? In order to be successful and compete, you have to have technology. And as technology grows and is so impactful in all our lives, there comes to be a very, an emerging role for governments. And not that we're trying to socialize digital technology, but there are many, many issues surfacing that require government attention. And you all are the folks who can, influence that going forward. But right now, from a Microsoft perspective, what we are trying to do is work with public sector and government agencies to help governments to empower citizens by offering services, and also empower their people, right, to provide the services that we want to see in the world today. So I think over the past 2 years with COVID, we all saw way more in a way more evident way how digital technology is just so critical for success, not just for governments, but for all companies. Being able to do what we need to do remotely requires technology. And not only did we have to immediately provide services and provide functional capability and internet services that allow for remote work, but we raise the visibility and attention. And so many government leaders are coming to realize that this is really important. So our CEO, Satya Nadella, made it just a priority to move forward, and not only to help enable all of the new reality of the digital technology world, but to make it safe, to apply ethics over it. Like with artificial intelligence, there's a lot going on out there that raises a lot of questions, and we have to really study carefully. But we have like 7 rules related to artificial intelligence that apply to ethics and approaching it responsibly. So we take the digital transformation happening around the world and within humanity now very, very seriously, and from an ethical perspective. Just want to show this. This is an older slide, and it talks about how digital technology has impacted all of these different areas of government, and it's now kind of mainstream. Like years ago, when I talked about this, it was sort of like fresh and new, the idea that all of this data could be used to help people. But now we're used to it. We're used to the impacts of like massive amounts of data out there, somehow behind the scenes being coordinated and connected to provide value to us. And transportation is more than getting people like where they need to go. It's, predicting new infrastructure projects. It's shipping strategies, it's carrier routes, natural event preparedness. I mean, we try to get ahead of these natural disasters that are coming. Sometimes that hurricane veers in a different direction, but years ago, we hardly even knew it was coming. We got research, logistics planning, the pandemic tracking, sustainability. The social awareness network is really, really important out there, especially today, some of the issues coming up with Facebook and privacy. And as people are understanding that their data is being sold and used, there are so many sensor equipped devices out there now collecting data, and especially, the GPS data of where everyone is at any given point in time. I mean, there's just so much accumulation of data for social networks that can be used very, very constructively by the government as well. So there's a lot that's already underway. But I put this next slide up. This is a chart we love, because it shows, what was happening in the 80s when PCs were just sort of introduced. And I do recall when PCs were first, coming to be a thing at IBM, the PC expert in our office said, someday there are going to be 1,000 of these around the world. So it's just wild when you think of, in the past 30 years, what's happened, right? The 90s, we had the internet. 10 years later, mobile became a thing, and you can do everything from your phone. But none of that compares to how exponentially, staggeringly different the world can be in 5 years from now with artificial intelligence. And I will tell you that a lot of my programs that I'm managing now are about machine language, and it's machine learning. And, with those massive amounts of data out there, machines can learn by putting data together. Some of it seems not like it's relevant or connected, but it is. And with that, you can forecast. For example, Professor Emmett just mentioned some of the work I'm doing with power companies. And, they have these vast amounts of data now to show what each individual household trend is, so that they can start to predict the power requirements and plan their business, around this kind of thing. So there's a lot of artificial intelligence, there's a lot of machine learning happening that's not scary. It's really, really constructive, but there's a lot coming at us. So backing up to last year, I just want to say that through the pandemic, there were many organizations that just came out to I call it leading through crisis. And these characteristics became really, really important. Security and privacy and transparency. Everyone was working remotely, so you had to know that your lines were secure, right? You had to take care of things and govern things remotely. Citizen services had to be delivered remotely. You couldn't go into an office and get what you needed. You had to do it remotely. Cross-agency collaboration, public health, first responder. It just became so incredibly critical through this crisis to still enable all of this to happen. And we at Microsoft actually are very proud of how we stepped in, and we helped businesses and companies to overcome a lot of these challenges and to quickly come up to speed, and to be able to share, especially when it comes to public health, sharing all of the research and health information to ensure that the public is kept safe. So so where are we today? Where are we now, and where are we going? A couple of comments here. Just wanted to make sure I got to with this. But if you can see in this chart, I think it was really kind of interesting. Modern technology is really like it's causing a shift in social behavior, right? Because if you see the guy in the middle of this slide has his iPhone with him, or his whatever Android, and he wants to get his driver's license. I couldn't do that in the past, but you want to do everything from your phone these days, your banking, your communication, everything. And like I've got a Tesla, I can't get into my car without my phone. And this device is everything. But all of these other pieces of information are tied to it. And so it seems like constituents and citizens out there are expecting that same level of, of service from what they expected from public sector. And so there's quite a different demand on public sector now as far as satisfying these needs. So we at Microsoft are looking, what we see our job to do is to empower governments and to enable governments to provide services. And in the three categories we're looking at is engaging with and connecting with citizens, providing the ability to reach out to citizens, to connect with citizens, and make sure that the infrastructure is safe, that it can be trusted, that there are privacy expectations there as well. And then modernizing the government workplace, and that's huge, to make the workplace, just have the right tools in place, the right digital tools, the right analytical tools, so that the government worker can be as effective as possible. And then this last piece here is just enhancing the specific services themselves, making them easier, making them trackable, making them available remotely and easily. And I personally have seen a lot of change and improvement in that area. So here are some of the things that we focus on quite a bit at Microsoft. And I'm not trying to make this about like Microsoft. It's just the subject here was, what are we doing at Microsoft? And security is huge. Security is huge for us. And we're sort of hoping to become the world leader for security, surveillance, vulnerability threats, protection, identity, all of that is a part of what goes into protecting the data and the processes out there that enable all of the services to be provided. So if we come to, when we're thinking about modernizing the government, the workplace, like the trust piece becomes like hugely important. And we at Microsoft are continuing to invest heavily, not just in our cloud infrastructure, but in the security and privacy and compliance that goes along with it. Like that's what our cloud is all about. People kind of say like, well, why do you want to put stuff in the cloud? The security is huge. I mean, it's not only easy to get things there and to access, you can buy any kind of applications that you want, but the security and the trust piece of it and the privacy is huge, and way more than you can anticipate with the threats and vulnerability that each individual PC would have. We really kind of pride ourselves in either leading or complying, certainly with all of the industry standards and compliance standards and security models. But the bottom line is, like, you want to secure not just the pixels on your screen and the cells in the table, but every bit of data, documents, databases, apps, websites, clouds, everything has to be, perfectly secure. Government services. There's going to be a lot of pressure on everyone in government to provide their employees with the tools that are needed. And there's a lot going on too with, it's not only what's on your phone. You have to realize all the data that's collected about you. It's, the Internet of Things has so much data out there, and tapping into the power of that data really enables a lot of public sector services. I mean, thinking of the police department for one. I mean, just they now utilize instantaneous and automatically generated data to get insights. I remember doing some work for the NYPD, and like, one of the things that criminals do is often boast about their crimes on social media, and being able to tap into that in a way that respects privacy and security, like, is another huge source of data for solving crimes. I mean, there's so much creative elements of what can be used as far as accessing data to provide appropriate services. Yeah, so much possibility ahead, and also so much within public sector has been done already somewhere in some entity, be it a city or a town or whatever. And within public sector, there's a lot of generous sharing, which there isn't in private sector. Private sector, if you've got a really cool application, you want to keep it for competitive advantage. Whereas in public sector, there's more likely to be sharing, sometimes selling, but it's at a reasonable cost. And so the future and the enhancements there are possibilities are really unlimited. I want to take a moment here now to talk about, this is kind of the meat of what I wanted to get into here. Sort of like what I've taken you through is sort of a little bit of where we've come from and where we are and what the possibilities are. There's a lot of rumbling in the industry about regulation around technology and privacy and free speech. If you hear a lot of what's going on with Facebook now, I mean, there's a lot of suggestion that some capabilities should be limited to teens that are in jeopardy of mental health issues if they're online too much on some of these social media apps. Where do we draw the line? What's free speech versus what is protecting your citizens? So there are many areas that have and deserve a lot of attention from public sector. But we at Microsoft consider these like 10 areas to be really important for digital policy. We work with our customers to do these things in the most productive and ethical way. We do try to lobby for some of them, but our focus is on supporting immigration in the workforce, trust and privacy and security, which I've already talked about, providing tools for cybersecurity, fraud, responsible artificial intelligence. That one is huge. You've got Elon Musk out there even calling for some sort of governance over artificial intelligence because you just don't know where it can go, right? Diversity and inclusion, compliance, measurement, sustainability and energy, criminal justice, just cloud and IT modernization for everyone, broadband access for everyone. We're doing a lot of, it's not Microsoft, but the Gates Foundation is doing a lot about enabling access for everyone in Africa. And then trying as best we can to support and move forward the STEM and computer science education for students in the United States. So these are all noble goals. These are all things that government is involved with, that we in technology have to support and be involved with in every way possible. We're the ones, like we, not just Microsoft, but we in the technology industry are the ones helping public and private institutions to advance their causes around these areas. Cannot speak about that without talking about the risks. There are so many areas in question right now that have to be worked through. It's kind of like the Wild West out there, right? Like intellectual property, who owns it, how is it owned, you know, and that includes data, right? When you're using an app, who owns your data, how is it owned, all the legalities around that, you know, transparency, what can be shared, liability, competition, cross-border data flows. When I work internationally all the time, and some data can cross boundaries, some cannot. My teams are generally all around the world, but some folks from some countries are not allowed to actually access machines that are in other countries. You know, this all has to be worked out. The ethics of the digital technology challenges that arise will need to be worked out. Security, privacy, and then the impact on workforce. That's a big one, because there are many studies done about which roles and job descriptions will be more and more impacted by the technology changes ahead. And it's very important that governments understand this so they can be prepared to retrain and reposition employees in the workforce to ensure that everyone has the ability to earn a healthy living. So come to this thought here, and there are a lot of rumblings about how governments should each have and implement a holistic digital policy, right? Because there are some governments, some countries that are definitely pulling themselves out of, you know, third world status because they have invested in technology. And sorry, it's my phone here. I turned it off. But I was honored by Professor Emick to present to some of the sessions with the Chinese government that were brought in years ago. And they were so full focused on digital technologies and advancing their society. And it's really helped them to become the superpower that they are now. So there's a lot of suggestion that digital policy can actually be a full pillar accepted with fiscal policy and monetary policy, that it should be a third pillar that sort of stands with them as we get into the future. So how would that work? You know, governments can each individually provide some sort of governance or standards and guidelines to many areas of digital technology. You know, the infrastructure itself, supporting the build out of a strong digital infrastructure is a blessing to everyone. Imagine if, you know, Wi-Fi was everywhere, and it was a public service. Data and privacy, obviously laws exist around data and privacy now, but they have to be refined. They have to be further developed. Artificial intelligence, biotech advancement, to the tech company monopoly situation. I mean, there's a lot of government attention to that right now, and then managing digital finance. So the tools to manage that, innovation and infrastructure support. I mean, where funding dollars go, right? Helping companies or leading research institutions to congregate and determine technology standards or operating standards, ensuring compliance with those standards. Interoperability support, who should be definitely able to talk to who should share, and then guiding behaviors with taxation, pricing, ways to empower regulation and influence the advancement or limit, and also compliance. You know, digital policy has to be complied, not only set, but complied to. So it's a whole huge world out there that I hope all of the students at SIPA are giving attention to, because I think as you are going to be the folks out there helping public sector organizations to be successful, you will definitely be impacted by the digital revolution and everything going on out there. I found this chart recently. I didn't find the chart. I pulled the chart together, but I found this information out there that I thought was really interesting, just giving some examples of some noteworthy countries that had government supported digital achievements. And like India implemented Aadhaar, which is the world's largest digital ID system. And it has, it's like I don't know, 9 or 10, it's kind of like our Social Security, but it has more information than just a number and a person. It's an ID system for everyone in India. China, it's recognized now as the world's largest digital education implementation, education for everyone. Israel is the world leader for supporting digital startups. I mean, it's enabled that country to be a standout and to develop some of the most, advanced technologies. But it's been also because of the support of the government. Kenya implemented this M-Pesa, it's a mobile payment system, and I think it was one of the first circumventing central banks, but it allowed business to take place at the most simplest fundamental levels, which really helped to bolster their whole economy. And Vietnam attributes their exceptional economic growth because they had a formal digital policy, and that greatly supported their digital and their economic expansion. So I think there are some examples of doing it right can help you get ahead. Fearful that ignoring it can cause some countries to fall behind. So that concludes the presentation I wanted to offer you. We at Microsoft are just so excited to be a part of enabling companies to optimize their core competencies, to determine, like I've spent really my career working with executives who are struggling with a business problem. And, I bring in a lot of really smart technology people to help to figure out a solution. And then we work to figure out, like, what would it take to make it happen? What are the experts we need? How much time? What are the resources, the funding? But basically, we use technology to help solve real world business problems and public sector problems, how to make the world a better place. And Microsoft, our motto is to empower every individual to kind of optimally perform and have a life that is optimized by getting the most information and the most access. And having access is not just for a business purpose, it's connectivity too. When you think in its most primitive form, like I remember 10 years ago when my mom had, she has passed now, but when she learned how to use email, it opened up the whole world to her, and we want to just optimize everybody's experiences through technology, not only for business purposes, but for social purposes as well, and make sure everyone is protected at the same time. So with that, I can open it up to any questions or any areas that you were interested in, and I'd be very curious to get anyone's thoughts or feedbacks about digital policy.
Thanks, Claudia. That was great. I have 2 questions for you. They're completely unrelated, but maybe you can take them one at a time, whichever one you like more, do first. So one is, you're actively engaged at Microsoft in a company-wide effort to engage more women, I assume not just at Microsoft, but in the industry in general. So if you could update us on that and how it's going. I mean, the reputation of the industry is not great on diversity, gender, race, background, all that stuff. And then the second question is, how, having worked at these 2 companies, I'll give you my outside perspective, and then you could maybe highlight it more. It seemed like IBM was a company that made things and did things, and now they're much more of a consulting company. And yet on the other side, Microsoft, which for a long time was just a company that made things, whether they're software or hardware, they still do. But they're getting bigger on the consulting side. So if you could compare and contrast the two companies in your experiences there. And so those are my two questions.
Sure. Thank you for those questions. On diversity and inclusion, it's been an incredible focus within Microsoft. We have so many programs. We've all had so much training. I've seen some really talented people asked to leave the company because there's a new focus on proper behavior all the time. And I think Microsoft is taking this so incredibly seriously, and I'm very proud of how we're addressing it. As far as gender goes, I think there's definitely efforts to kind of, at one point it was like 26% of our population was female and only 17% were executives. And there's definitely an effort underway to offer more opportunity to women, for sure. My role, I mentor women, and I have very specific people that I mentor, but I'm also called upon to present at different conferences about female leadership in a male-dominated industry, and a lot of it is finding your voice. And I'm not real big on the whole lean in thing and everything solved, but it's more just being highly attuned to when you've said something and people aren't listening, that kind of thing, like just having feeling really grounded and feeling very confident and feeling bold to ask for what you want. Because I find in a company like Microsoft, I'm not saying all companies are like this, but if you ask for it, you get it. And so women typically don't ask for it. Like they think they just work, and they're going to get ahead. But being very clear and asking for respect or the next promotion seems to go really far. So anyway, I do mentor women. The simple things like one of the women I mentor was on a conference call once, and she had some really interesting ideas, and someone cut her off and said, and just sort of like hijacked the meeting. And I had to caution her afterwards, like, don't let that happen. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it, right? Because women are so used to being a little bit subservient still. So anyway, so I do a lot of personal mentoring. Interesting observation, your other question about IBM and Microsoft. IBM definitely shifted from making machines and software to being a consulting company, a global business consulting company, and they're still heavily invested in research. One of the things holding IBM back is just the legacy of stuff, old stuff they have to support. To be honest with you, a lot of it is still out there, and it just doesn't make them as light on their feet, right? And like we see with technology, sometimes if a company or a country rather is not very advanced, it's easier for them to get to the next level. For example, when cell phones were a thing, were just becoming a thing. When some of the countries, be it maybe Africa, South America, that didn't have regular phone support and old telephone lines and all the infrastructure of old telephone service to support, could easily jump to cell phone and can kind of go more quickly. So sometimes, bring this back to IBM, like having all that old stuff, legacy stuff to support, I think doesn't allow them to be as nimble as some of the other companies. Microsoft used to be a software company, right? And as everything has moved to the cloud and software is sold as kind of as a service, right? Microsoft, and under Satya Nadella, really shifted the focus to being a cloud-based company and helping companies to, the big thing about the cloud is it holds huge amounts of data, over which we can run artificial intelligence, we can build apps. So we've become, in order to do that, you need consultants to go in and understand the business problem and bring in the right technology consulting services. So we're really helping companies and governments to do the next thing. Means you're also selling them a piece of software, you're helping them build what they want to build. So that's been the transformation for us.
Thank you. Although, just a quick follow-up, 1 second. So, but Microsoft still makes a truckload of money from, the Microsoft software package, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, the world.
Yes. Our revenues come from software, but as you'll probably notice, there are many different ways to access software, though. You can buy it, or you can just be in the cloud and kind of rent it. I mean, there's just many different business models around our software. Also, games are very big. Cloud services, and a lot of development tools for developers. So it used to be all software. It's software, consulting, cloud, gaming, and you know how it is. If you don't change, you don't survive, right? And so that's just the way the world is these days. And as just this presentation here, talking about all of the changes that humanity is going through, be it in the form of a government or a country, it doesn't happen with the folks that are an expert in their field. It has to happen with technology support.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the technology companies in the form of consulting.
Thank you. Others?
Hi, Adela. You're on mute.
Hi. Yes. Hi, Claudia. Thank you. That was so interesting. And I'm just speaking from the perspective of ethics, which I teach here. And I'm just wondering, how much time does a company like Microsoft spend thinking about who's responsible for the digital fails? Now, like with Afghanistan, the Taliban failed to comply to the treaty. In other words, they did not make all decisions peacefully with the existing government before moving in on Kabul. And Biden said, we will take, equal measures against them, and then sent the drone over the horizon, quote unquote, and it just killed some other people. Okay, so in a case like that, that's high digital stuff, that drone. Who do you sue? The administration, the Department of Defense, the company? You can't sue the robot or the drone. And so who is held? And of course, in this case, nobody told the taxpayers or, the citizenry at large whatever happened. It was just like, oh dear. So like, who is going to, in this depth of all these layers of responsibility, whose fault is that going to be? And it's easy to see whose fault is something like in the case of George Floyd, but over the horizon. And people constantly get frustrated in small ways with high tech, so where is that conversation going?
Adela,
the responsibility conversation.
I love this question. I think your example, I would even love to use it if I'm presenting this material again, because that's the stuff right now that's a big mess. When I say that's sort of the Wild West out there, that's what our justice system has to figure out, right? And the ethics of this will be debated at all kinds of level with, because everyone has their own argument, right? And their own interest in mind. But these are the areas that aren't defined yet through our legal system, or really defined via ethics. But will be debated. And I think examples like that can set the standard for the future, and actually perhaps put in some pre-launch protection, or approval requirements or something, that it doesn't happen again. And that's one example. There are examples like that out where everywhere, right? Because this is a new field and it hasn't really been, we don't even know the possibilities yet, right?
Right.
So that's where digital policy, and then it becomes even more complicated when it's inter-country, right? International, crossing company borders. These are the things that we need the best minds like yours, and when it comes to ethics, to help us kind of weed through and sort out. And everyone, I know Microsoft, we want to play fair. We want to do the right thing. But we're supporting companies, and we don't necessarily know everything about what their business intents are. So I think it's a great question.
Oh, thank you. That makes me feel better, because when my students ask me questions like that, I think, how do I answer this? So I appreciate your comments.
It is, and I hope I've provided like a picture of the current landscape out there as to how how digital technologies, like that one chart, they were PCs, then there was the internet, then there was mobile, and now there's artificial intelligence and drones and all this stuff that we can control digitally. It's exponentially going to be creating many situations that we have to governments, and I'm not advocating the kind of government control like that China has, but that there has to be some protection and boundaries and interest in the form of public sector organizations. I so appreciate that you attended this short presentation here, and that was just such a great question. And I love that you're kind of bouncing it against your world and thinking of some of the challenges ahead. So yeah. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you.
Dr. Emick, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you so much. And I would love to discuss any of these things further with you. And
do you have time, Claudia, do you have time for 2 quick questions? We got 2 hands up.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't see that. I'm used to Teams, not Zoom.
Jeremy, can you?
Jiho, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. Claudia, thank you so much. That was such a great insight into this world. And it seems to be like digital technology is a great enabler for impact. It could be for traceability, verification, wherever. But how is Microsoft really helping businesses, particularly the small and medium enterprises that governments really care about, to push them towards like a more environmentally, but also like socioeconomically friendly future? Or is that not really in kind of Microsoft's like mission and scope at the moment?
That's also an interesting area. Well, first of all, we're trying to do it by setting an example as a role model. We've committed to be carbon neutral. I can't remember the year, but it's in the not too far away. And that's not hard for us because we're a software company, right? We're not a big, hardware manufacturing company, but we try to set that by an example internally. Ethics are such a big thing internally at Microsoft. Our culture is a culture of sharing and making, like you're responsible for making everyone better. And like when you have a performance review at the end of the year, you get rated on how you helped other people to be better, but you also get rated on how you let other people help you get better. So it's sort of like a two-way street. So, ethics are constantly being preached. And so we internally as Microsoft employees try to take that ethics and that approach to our customers when we're working with them. And we try to set an example outward as a company. But we can't be responsible necessarily for influencing, our customers in this way. There are deals we've pulled out of because we see them going in a direction that's not ethical, or supporting our own national interests. But as far as taking it to another level, we aren't. As you suggested, are we like kind of having influence out there? But it would be nice to see that happen, because I think Microsoft has come to be a company that is generally well respected in the public, and a lot of the other technology giants are under fire right now, because of privacy and social media, and Microsoft isn't really included in that. We've kind of managed to not be included in that. Obviously, we're not as focused on the social elements, more the enterprise, but it would be really, really great if because we're fairly respected, if we were able to push forward those thoughts on being green and also ethical social interaction. That's where we need digital policy to help us, you guys. We need you guys to get in there and help us push these things forward.
And I think we have more from Tim.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Claudia, this was great. Thank you so much for your time.
My
So
pleasure.
I'm curious, or if you have any tips, and I'm sure there are multiple and contextual answers, but how do you broach the topic with these firms and leaders at these firms about revenue versus surviving and doing the right thing with regulation?
Well, regulation, there's no negotiating that, right? And
Sure.
standards compliance, huge standards compliance in the technology world for us. And regulation is just totally non-negotiable. From an ethics perspective, to kind of going to do the right thing, I'm not so sure that that's our responsibility can be to either participate or not, but not, we're not the guardian of our customers' ethics and policies. We will absolutely, all of our people are so well trained to pull out of anything that's suspect, and we have so many organizations internally that if you're concerned about something, you don't make the decision or not, you report it to the agency, and they internally within Microsoft that makes that decision. But we don't necessarily take it upon ourselves to police other organizations. Did I get your question right?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe.
But we choose not to do business with companies that has suspect operations.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that that's really helpful to know. I think too, what's helpful is that I find that some folks that I've chatted with, it seems like just getting into any sort of advancement, even, they kind of weigh it against their current revenue. And it's like hard for them to see to the horizon that this is a competitive advantage and a good direction to go, while they're still kind of holding on to their current cash cow.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. How do we encourage companies to move forward with an initiative? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. We put teams of people on it to dig deep as to the benefits. We can financially identify with soft benefits, and anything that we can do to cost justify in a short amount of time the investment on their part. And there's so many tools out there right now to help us do that. And we qualify early on to make sure, like I'm involved right now with what could be a huge health partnership between Microsoft and some other major company in related to health in the health industry. And, you know, we've got reams of people on that one, but we're qualifying every step along the way. Like, are you going to go here with us? Let us show you what we can do. We can enable you to do for your constituents. And so it's sort of a step by step building the business case and getting the interest, because at the end of the day, every private sector organization has to make money to stay alive, right? They have to pay their people, they have to pay their shareholders. So, you know, it has to make sense financially. The other thing, Tim, is sometimes you get very progressive thinking leadership and sometimes you don't, right? And they're called pursuit teams at Microsoft. They study, you know, the stakeholders, the customer stakeholders they're dealing with, and see who can be an internal supporter of a new innovative idea. And often, which is the case with stakeholders, it's not just their job, it's their job to do X, Y, Z. There's also often a personal submotive that we try to understand, like someone might want to get promoted, someone might want industry recognition, someone maybe messed up last year and they want to do well for themselves by coming up with something really new and creative. So we kind of try to get to know not only the company and the initiative, but the people involved and what's important to them, and try to make it happen.
That's really insightful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I think Bill had to hop off the call, but we're very glad to have had you join us for this fantastic presentation.
Jeremy, thank you. This was really fun for me and a real pleasure. And I think at the end of this deck, there's my contact information. If anyone has any questions or follow-up thoughts, I welcome them. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Good luck with everything.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Thank you.